Welcome to Unveiling Death. I am Rabbi Jeffrey Weill. The death of a friend. In this episode, my daughter Betsy interviews me about the loss of my dear friend Michael Petriano, who died 22 years ago. Betsy was a toddler when Mike died, but she and her sister and brother, Ruthie and Sammy, grew up understanding what a mammoth loss this was. Betsy and I discussed Mike's and my premonitions, if that's what they were, that he would die. And we talk about my dreams, if that's what they were, about Mike for the year after his death, and a lot more.
Hi, Dad.
Hey, Bets.
So obviously we're here to talk about your friend Mike, who I've heard about throughout my entire life. And I've known that this was a very strong friendship. To me, like it transcends friendship even. It's like a brotherhood or very, very close connection. And I know you were friends, I think you met in high school. But your story with Mike really starts with a different loss, with your Uncle Mickey's loss.
Mm-hmm.
You tell me that story and explain a little bit more about your relationship with Mike, which
Yeah,
started 19 years before he died.
you're right. Mike was a best friend. I've been very blessed to have best friends, people, men and women that I just really, really love. And Mike was absolutely a very, very, very close, dear brother from another mother for me. And we were super close. So I knew Mike in junior high school in Westfield, New Jersey, where we grew up.
Hmm.
And he was just known to be a very, very, very smart guy. And but we took a class together, a history class together in high school, senior year of high school. And in May of 1983, that's when my Uncle Mickey died in the early, early hours of the morning. And Mike, whom I had been friendly with, and we had done some history class projects together and joked around and stuff like that, but didn't hang out very much. But when Mick died, Uncle Mickey died, Mike said something that really showed his heart to me. He responded in a way that no other high school friend responded, particularly the guys. He said, I feel for you.
How old were you guys?
Uh, he had just turned 18 and I was still 17.
Hmm. Can you like fill us in a little bit, just maybe a story or just some description of how your friendship
Yeah,
was
that
in your
relationship,
20s
sure,
and 30s and
for
yeah.
sure. And Mike and I just had we imagined ourselves like being old men together. We imagined ourselves sitting, or he actually wrote a poem once where he and I were sitting on a park bench in Riverside Park in the Upper West Side of New York City,
Mhm.
wearing hats. And we wore hats like when we were younger, we wore hats a lot and we called each other brothers in hat. And just had like a lot of very, I don't know how to describe it, honey. He was just it was an extremely warm, loving, fun, funny relationship. We laughed a lot. We spent a summer together in the top floor apartment of his grandparents, Park Slope, Brooklyn, Brownstone. We spent a lot of time drinking coffee late at night in diners. We watched lots of movies together, like Woody Allen movies, Ingmar Bergman movies, just like we read poetry to each other, just had an extraordinary closeness. And when he was mentally ill and he struggled with mental illness. And when he was early on, like in late, right after high school and then in college, I spent time with him in psych wards. Um, and when he's having episodes at his home, I would be there with his family, whom I love, the Petriano family. And we were just sort of like extremely, it was extremely close friendship.
Mhm. And so we fast forward a little bit of time, and I think that you get to the week of his 37th birthday. And so I want to hear about the day that he died, but I know that there are some events leading up to that that might help inform.
Right.
something.
Yeah.
So could you talk a little bit about that?
Right. I'll say also that just about our friendship, I was like honored to be his friend. He was
Hmm.
an exceedingly bright person. And I was just so honored that I would be a friend of his and another friend, Mike, and some other people who were just really smart. I just felt like I was it made me feel good to be in that company.
Yeah.
But I'll also say that he knew you. You wouldn't remember him, but he knew you as a tiny, tiny little baby, and he got you a little gift as a bracelet when you were born,
Yeah.
right?
I wear it every
Yeah,
day.
you wear it every day.
Wearing it
Wow,
right now.
wearing it right now. I see. Got it. That is pretty. And he would pick you up, and he would go like I remember in our kitchen, and he would pick you up over his head, and he'd go balloony, lifting you up, and as he said balloony, balloony. Which is fun. But
Yeah.
yes, the he was in he had a his birthday was April 26th. He died on May 2nd, which is the same day as we said, 19 years later as my Uncle Mickey. We were gonna hang out on his birthday, I think it was, and he didn't call, and I was frustrated I didn't hear from him. And then I learned that he didn't call me because he was had an episode and he was in the hospital, Muhlenberg
Hmm.
Hospital in I think Plainfield, New Jersey. And I would go there after work. I was living in South Orange, Mom and I, and you were living in South Orange. And I just felt so, I felt so down because he was just really depressed and he
Yeah.
was imagining kind of living in this darkened world. He was an extraordinarily loving person. He had a
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful heart, and he wanted only the best for people. He
Right.
was a peace pursuing, love giving human being. And to see someone like that
Hmm.
in such a dark place was heartbreaking. During that week, those few days, I remember one time I was walking home from the train station to our house, and I was writing his eulogy, composing a eulogy that I would give to him for him in my head as I was walking up the
Yeah.
hill towards our house. And I don't know if that was premonition.
Hmm.
I don't think it was a premonition. I think it was probably just an anxiety on my part, a fear that that's what was going to happen.
Yeah. Well, just for clarity, you didn't think there was no real reason for you to think that he was going to die at that point.
Correct. There
Yeah.
was not. You're right about that. I mean, he was in the psych ward. And that terrible. But then he was doing a little better, and they put him maybe a couple of days before he ultimately died in the medical ward because they had stabilized him somewhat. But no, you're right. I don't think that I would have known he was not in mortal danger
Right.
at all. No, I did. I would not have known that. You're right about that. But so something compelled me, and it could have been anxiety or some sort of premonition. I don't know to
Yeah.
start composing a eulogy, not knowing that I would actually be eulogizing him a few days later.
Yeah. Can you tell the story of when he got dinner the night before
Yeah,
he died at the
for
hospital?
sure, for sure. He was in the medical ward at this point, and
So he'd stabilized a little bit
he
mentally.
stabilized a little bit mentally. Yes, so he was in the medical ward, and we were talking. He was in bed, and he kept on like putting on and off his glasses, and he seems agitated. He said, "I feel so mixed up." And I said, "Do you feel mixed up here?" And I touched him on his forehead. Or do you feel mixed up here? And I touched him in his heart. And he said here, and he pointed to his heart. Like just everything, I think just physically and mentally, he was just kind of just mixed up. And so he was
Yeah.
taking he wore glasses, who were very simple, kind of beatnik like or dark frame glasses, on and off and on and off and on and off. And then he was saying other things, but then he said to me, he pointed to his they brought him dinner, and he pointed to his dinner and he said, last meal. And I said something like, Mike, come on, you're gonna get out of here, and we're gonna go out and have a good time, and we're gonna meet girls. And like that sort of thing. We're gonna go to diners, we'll hang out. And then he was like looking at me, but then he pointed again to his meal and he said, last meal, like in a
Mhm.
definitive kind of way.
Yeah.
And then yes, the next day, I don't know if he had a meal after that. I've never known that. But
Mhm.
he died, and it was a pulmonary embolism that he died of.
I mean, I know that you say that you're eulogizing him before you even thought consciously that he might die, that that might have been anxiety. Um, but to me, the combination of that plus his last meal comment, which has always stuck out to me. I mean, it seems to me like it was some kind of premonition. And I'm wondering if you put like those two like in conversation with each other, do you think that that's some kind of premonition?
For him, I I feel like it was premonition. I mean, I remember this so clearly, like he just knew somehow. It was just so definitive and certain last meal.
Hmm.
And for me,
Did that change your thinking at all when he said that?
about his that he might die the next day, kind of, or that it would
Yeah.
actually be his last meal.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. That's because, I'd heard so much stuff from him that was not
Yeah.
necessarily
Yeah.
rational just
Yeah.
during those few days that I don't think. I mean, I probably went home and told mom. I don't remember that he had said that, but I don't think I
Yeah.
really thought that that was the case. But just, looking back at it, and memory is kind of an unreliable thing, but this is how I
Mhm.
remember it. Sees at last meal two times, maybe three times. But so looking back on it, I think like he knew somehow he knew. And when I was saying, "Come on, man, we're gonna get out," like if Kim was saying like we're gonna break out of prison or something like that, but you're gonna
Yeah.
get out of here and we're going to go out and have fun like we always do and whatever. Like I think I believed that that would happen,
Yeah.
that he'd get over this.
So when I think of Mike, and it's probably because of how you and mom have described him to me throughout my life, I think of a happy person, which is strange because he really suffered from mental illness and depression and all of that. But I think of him with a smile, like just happy, joyful, very loving. And I know that he was in a very dark place leading up to his death. And I want to know, given this duality of he was so loving, so kind, so open, and also a, I mean, presumed on my part, like hopelessness. Do you think his death was a peaceful death? I mean, obviously you weren't there, but do you think that even though he suffered a lot specifically in the week leading up to his death, do you think that he he went with a sense of calm or like resignation? Um, or do you think that it was like a jarring type of death?
But that is a very good question, Bets. And I don't know. I mean, when I think about that you know, when I think about those last minutes of his,
Yeah,
it makes me very sad because I
yeah,
don't know how he felt.
yeah.
I remember when I first kind of got some details about those last minutes. Minute, I don't even know. When I learned like what that was about, like how that happened, I felt very sad because I was hoping it was just boom and
Hmm.
gone, but I don't think it was quite like that.
Yeah.
But so, but I imagine if Mike were conscious in some way after he died, and we
Hmm.
can talk about that a little bit, if you want in a moment,
Yeah.
that he would look on his 37 full years, 37 years in a week, as to your point about him being happy, that there'd be some satisfaction there. Happy, I don't know. I mean, he was, there's a lot that was unrealized, unaccomplished in that life because of
Yeah.
his illness. Um, but you're right, there was tremendous love. He loved he loved the people that he loved very, very deeply.
Yeah.
And he imagined a world of peace and love that might yet exist.
Hmm.
And he was beautiful in that way. And he loved music and he felt that very deeply too. And poetry, of course. He loved New York City. He had a lot of love, but
Yeah.
particularly the people, his family. People wanted to be around him.
Hmm.
Right? People wanted to be around him, and they probably couldn't even define why they wanted to be around him, but it was because of that beautiful, loving heart.
Yeah.
So if you were able to have some consciousness post death,
Yeah.
then I think, if you take the love with you,
Yeah.
he would just be suffused with it. I had a vision of him after he died. He was in kind of a white robe, sort of translucent, and in the air and just flying away, floating, flying away, and it was very peaceful.
Yeah. But you said also to me before, that for a year after he died, you would have these, he would visit you. Is
Mhm.
that correct?
Yes, in dreams. The day that he died, and that night when I was home and I was getting ready for bed, and I said to mom, I said, I don't know how a relationship like this ends. Or maybe I
Hmm.
said, I don't know how a friendship like this ends. I didn't understand. I did not understand how that could possibly happen.
Yeah.
How does that end?
Yeah.
It wasn't like a statement other than just pure bewilderment.
Right.
But in any event, it sort of didn't end in a way because yes, for just about a year, I would have these dreams frequently. I mean, certainly more than once a week, where Mike was there.
Hmm.
And, there are dreams and dream images and dream plots and stuff like that that are also weird and dreamlike. But these were something
Yeah.
else that I think other, people do have sometimes where I would, like, he'd be with me physically and I would put my arm around his shoulder, for instance, like the buddies that we
Yeah.
were, and I would feel that
Yeah.
shoulder. I'd feel it physically, tangibly feel that. And
Yeah.
and then there was just about a year after, in a dream, he was there. I was like being thrown around, flung around, whoosh, 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 like a lasso kind of.
Yeah.
And it was crazy. I mean, it was like, wow, what? And I think it was that same dream or that same evening where I said to him, Mike, you have to go,
Yeah.
or something along those lines. Like, Mike, you have to go. Because I kind of felt badly that he was still hanging around. At least that's how I was understanding it, that he was still
Mm.
present.
Badly, badly because you felt like you maybe were holding him back, or just you wish that he would be at peace and not feel the need to come back to our world or whatever.
Yeah, the latter. I felt like he deserved to be released. And whether
Yeah.
he was just being yoked to this world because of me, which I wouldn't be that presumptuous, or just people,
Right.
or just feeling like he
Yeah.
just, feel like he was taken too abruptly. Like, I don't know.
Right.
But I
Yeah.
said to him, almost admonishing him, you gotta go, Mike, you have to go. You have to go. And I never
Yeah.
had that kind of dream again. I literally, that was it. There was never that
And
sense of that kind of dream where he was really with me again. I've dreamt about him since then, but not nearly as frequently, and
yeah.
not like that, not nearly as tangibly.
Yeah. And did you, when you told him that in your dream, was there a part of you that was sad about it, or just kind of in your dreamlike state, like this is what has to be done?
Yeah, I think it was that. It was almost like an instruction to him, like you just got it's time to go. And I was mourning that year. I mean, I don't know where these dreams come from. It could be completely from within me. Maybe it was me saying to
Mm-hmm.
myself, Jeff, you have to let
Mm.
go. And that's possible
Yeah.
too. And I had not thought about that until this conversation, Bets. But uh but yeah, maybe, but someone, I was telling someone, whether it was him or me, to let go. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, right at a year's time, which is
Yeah.
significant because in religious traditions, certainly in Jewish tradition, and Mike was not Jewish, but in Jewish tradition, the year is a significant, the first Yortzeit or the anniversary of death that is that's a significant time when someone can really be, according to some thought, really unmoored or released from any attachment to this world.
When we were talking about this episode of Unveiling Death, you said that everybody that you have a close relationship with knows you in a different way than anyone else. That means that when you lose someone you love, like Mike, you lose that version of yourself as well.
Mhm.
Um, and you also said that, I mean, you asked mom, how does a relationship like this end? So I'm wondering, do you feel like that version of yourself exists at all? Because has always, he will have always existed, or do you feel like that was really a part of you that went with him?
That's right. I think that when we lose someone that we love, that we're really close to, we lose part of ourselves because that person understands us and knows us in a way that no one else does. Every relationship is unique, so we are seen by the people that we love in unique ways. I've lost that. I mean, I have.
Hmm.
I have other really close friends, people that I love so much, and family members too. Um,
Yeah.
but no one will really see me the way Mike saw me. He used to joke around like he knew me, he really knew me pretty well. And so if I was in a grumpy mood, he'd say, "Oh, that's chef number 17." And if I was in a silly mood, he'd say, "Oh, that's chef number 6." And if I was in a impatient mood, "Oh, that's chef number 24." He just took these numbers randomly, but like he knew my different moods
Yeah.
and he was able to kind of
Yeah.
be playful with them even when I was in a bad mood.
Yeah.
So right, like all that stuff is gone. It's just in my memory, and I could share it with you and with others. But that's what loss is. A lot of loss is losing a part of ourselves. Those relationships do end. I mean, my relationship with Mike. I mean, I miss him. I still think about him. Still I still love him. But
Mhm.
the world moves on. And
Mhm.
he knew you, but he didn't know you as a grown up person, and he didn't know your your sister, your brother. He didn't know that I'd be here in Chicago. He didn't know a lot. And the same thing with all of everyone who loved him or who loves anyone, the world does move on, and that's actually a healthy thing.
Do you think that in somewhere, wherever he is, do you think that he knows all of that?
I just wish I knew. And maybe that's why I'm doing
Yeah.
Unveiling Death to begin with. I wish I did know if our loved ones know what's happening with
Yeah.
us. Um, I wish I knew, like we all wish that we knew, but in this case, we're all very, very, very dumb, ignorant. We just don't know.
Well, we can work on it
That's what we're
with
doing
podcasts. Yeah,
with podcasts
exactly.
like this, with a podcast like Unveiling Death.
Yeah, that's who needs scientific research.
Right, exactly. We have this.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks, Dad, for talking to me.
Thanks, Bess, for talking to me. I am so grateful.
As am I.
Thanks to my interviewer and daughter, Betsy Weill. Thanks, as always, to my creative director, my editor, my son, Sammy Weill. Thanks to my band, the Night Owls of Chicago, for the music you're listening to right now, coming to Montrose Saloon on November 23rd. And thank you for listening to Unveiling Death, Eternity in about 24 minutes, every other Monday.